Hello, and welcome to FBL Broadcasting, COP26 with Scientists Warning Europe. And, as I say, FBL Broadcasting is part of the Canadian Corporation Limited, which is something I have to say legally. Don't forget to check us out on, what we got, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and, of course, YouTube. Well, 2 days left of the conference. Ed and the team and Scientists Warning and all those other scientists have got a couple of days left to mingle. I've got to admit, amazing to be there for 3 days, thanks to Scientists Warning Europe. To sit there and listen to scientists talking and debating and working out and, collaborating as well. It's quite extraordinary. And I even took a photo of me at the dinner table. And they said, "Oh, why are you taking that?" This sort of thing. And we all just smiled. I said, "I just wanted people to believe that I was with a load of scientists, and I was listening to, what's happening in the climate and their predictions and what's causing and what they're doing. And like one of the biggest things, carbon dioxide is like 6 times heavier. No, sorry, 6 times less heavier than methane." So if that comes up in the pub quiz, people, let me know and just say thanks for sharing that. Of course, I like to pass on my knowledge as always. So today we actually have Maria Pia Cassarini. Hopefully, Maria or Pia, you won't have a go at me for pronouncing that wrong, and hopefully I'll get you on a show at some point. Maybe I have sent a message to my contact at Scientists Warning Europe just to say, any chance that they can jump on after the press conference, which will be quite interesting if they can. So, I mean, Pia, I literally till 1 o'clock in the morning with Peter, her husband as well. He only stayed up till 12. I mean, he had a long day as well, but explaining to me what she's done, where she's been, some of the things that, I don't even want to spoil. I want to save that for an interview with her. But I'm sure she will go over it today. I believe that's who's on there today. That's what's down on the spreadsheet that I have. So, very extraordinary woman. Extraordinary what she's done, what they've created, and how they go about doing everything that they do. Just flabbergasted, really, to be fair, the stuff that she's done. And I would like to, try and help science in its way if I can, and help young budding scientists. Definitely, if that one comes up and you're watching this, especially on the replay, just keep an eye out for that and watch it when it does. I will publicize it enough. Something I want to do after the conference, so when everybody starts to go back to their own places, so to speak, or get on with the rest of their experiments and analysis. But definitely one to watch that will be. I mean, one of the biggest things is the swimming pool at the bottom of these breaker boats that go through the Arctic or the North Pole. And, there's a swimming pool at the bottom and she's swimming in it. And all she says is, you can hear the scraping of the ice against the hull. And you'll survive for 3 minutes if that water comes in, because if it breaks the hull, then there's not much you can do. You're swimming there in your bikini, and it's ice. I mean, we're talking ice cold. So blew my mind. I was just like, wow, I never swimming pool, interesting, and two, what these scientists do. We often think of a scientist sitting in a illuminated room by artificial light and not really out at these places. But actually, it's actually quite a good life, as in what they get to see. Certain ones, I suppose there's some scientists who just sit in a lab and that's their whole life. But I think for young people, especially if you're deciding on your GCSE, and science seems to be an interesting thing that you would maybe are interested in, because the chats I've had with these scientists is quite interesting. One of the questions I asked, how did you get into science? What made you follow the route of the sciences? And it's interesting how things in their lives have changed, and they've chatted to a certain person, and then, you know, they were kind of interested in, you know, in the world, so to speak, in how it works and develops and how it all works. And then they meet somebody or something happens, and it brings them into the fold. So, you know, they start to say, well, do you know what? Actually, I'm going to pursue science. And then they have a remarkable life. They have loads of experience that we don't necessarily consider. I didn't. And I'm now re-educated into that, on how they use this. And, you know, the experience they have is, you know, it doesn't matter how much money you have in life sometimes, you know, if you do what you do, and I say this to my children, do what you believe will make you happy, or what you like. Like when you're choosing certain things, my son was saying about being a plumber. I said, Jack, I don't know if you kind of want to be a plumber. I don't think that'll really be your sort of thing. But then again, if you think that is, then pursue that. Because he's 15 years old, soon to be 16 in a month. Wow, 16. But yeah, but business is more catered to him, I personally think. But I've left that up to him. It's his choice. So he's actually thinking, you know, we had a chat for like an hour. And sometimes in life, you know, you need to be influenced, not influenced. Yeah, influenced. Okay, let's go with influence. Let me know in the comments, actually. I haven't brought the comments up. People might comment in. So, yeah, it's an extraordinary thing. Young people have to make a decision quite early in their life, really, if you think about it. And sciences is definitely something to look into. There is, you know, more and more scientists joining the brigade, as I say. But they can always do more. And clever thinkers out there, I'm sure there's a lot of you. And especially if you're a parent watching this and your child doesn't kind of know. And as a parent, we kind of know what our children are good at or what they like or whatever. And sometimes, you know, they're in the world of you know, social media, and they get pulled into, you know, oh, maybe you can make a you know, your life in social media. That's how they think, on money, quick draw. And sometimes, you know, actually being, you know, doing something that you love is far, far, far better than do something that you don't like so much, but make lots of money. Choice is yours, people. I made my decision many moons ago, and yeah, you know, I'm more happy for it. Yes, financially, it's not as good as what I could earn, but you never know. Potential is always recognised, and there's the ability to make more. So take that from what you want from that, but let me know in the comments what you think. You know, have you got kids? Do you think they'll be good for the sciences? You know, do you think they would love it, but you're finding it hard to, I hate to use the word persuade. I would say kind of intellectually communicate and making them understand that actually it would make them happy and they'll make a good life. And I'm, again, talking to these scientists, I can't say this enough. I'm bewildered with their experiences and what they've taught me, what they told me. So again, as we wait for the live stream to come up, I believe it starts at 2:35. Well, hopefully it does. It seems to be a bit behind here, but there was a thing about 3:15. But just waiting for it to come up, and once it does, we'll bring that up, and you can see them getting ready. But Pia today is going to be. I'm looking forward to this. I really am. You know, I've got coffee. I've got my coffee. Actually, come to think of it, love it. Us tech geeks and our coffee. But literally, Pia is inspirational, especially if you're young. Oh, they're coming up. Hang on. Let me just get this all sorted so we can see them. Oh, there's no Ed there.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here to share our talk on polar education and climate change. We'll give you an overview of polar education initiatives. Polar Educators International, known as PEI, Hearts in the Ice, and Ikavik, Bridge in Inuktitut, a voice from the high Arctic. Let me begin by thanking the organizations that made this meeting possible. We have the Power, Sustainable Population Australia, Interfaith Centre for Sustainable Development, International Society for Ecological Economics, Facing Future.Earth, and the Tsuchi Foundation. I'll be both host and participant, so I'll introduce myself. I'm Maria Pia Cassarini, also the wife of Peter Wadhams. I'm a Polar historian and vice president of Polar Educators International since 2017. I was former director of the Italian Zavatti Polar Institute and Museum, done 10 field expeditions, 8 in the Arctic and 2 in the Antarctic. Sharing this talk with me are two very special people. A dear friend, Suniva Sorby, on my right, from Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada, and we are both members of the Society of Women Geographers in Washington, D.C. And we have a pleasure to have also Hilda Furlandström, who's lived in Svalbard for 26 years. Both Suniva and Hilda are Polar ambassadors and CEO, which means climate engagement officers. Suniva made history in 1993 as part of the first team of women to ski to the South Pole. In 2020, both her and Hilda made history as the first women to spend 19 months solo on Svalbard. We also have a fourth participant, Shelly Elverum, who recorded her special contribution as she lives in the high Arctic in Pond Inlet, Baffin Island, Nunavut. So, question, why polar education? Well, a change in the polar ice was first noticed in the Arctic back in the 1980s. With the Arctic amplification, the region is experiencing the most extreme effects of global warming. These effects don't stop in the Arctic, but affect the whole planet, causing extreme climatic events, sea level rise, threat of methane, release of permafrost. Polar education is very important in making the public understand this connection, and a number of countries are including it in their teaching. So Hilda, what about polar education?
Well, I think that what's happening in the Arctic, as you said, doesn't stay in the Arctic. And none of us are immune to the warming of Arctic. And as we have learned now during our stay at Bamsebu, with experts on the call to kids from all over the world, 100,000 kids, we have learned a lot. And it doesn't only affect the population up in the north, it affects the whole world, even though the effect that actually makes the warming up in the north are done further south on the world. So we protect what we love, and knowledge change behavior.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We can start talking about Polar Educators International. That's the association that I feel very proud to be associated with. Polar Educators International was founded in 2012 and was created from networks formed during the International Polar Year of 2007-2008. And as a direct outcome of the IPY, the International Polar Year Conference in Montreal, which was named From Knowledge to Action. Our mission is connecting polar education research and the polar community. By leading dialogue and collaboration between educators and researchers, PEI aims to highlight and share the global relevance of the polar regions. And really, anybody can be a polar educator. With us, we have more than 1,000 members, and we have scientists, educators, graduate students, community activists, museum curators, policy researchers, digital communicators, cruise ship lecturers, you name it. So we also recently included indigenous knowledge in our mission statement, thanks to 2 new council representatives who are Arctic natives. Our vision is that we are an essential network of educators and researchers aiming to provide a deeper understanding of current polar sciences to a global audience. And really, we want to bridge the gap between science and education. And we have strategic goals, which we call the 3 C's, communicate, collaborate, and create, to develop a robust, flexible, trusted international presence. grow and strengthen the PEI network and its relationships, and provide relevant and timely opportunities for both education and scientific communities. We have taken part in defining meetings such as Polar 2018 in Davos, and we were asked, that was a great honor to be asked to participate in the third Arctic Science Ministerial that took place in Tokyo in May this year. Out of the outcomes of the International Polar Year was a book, Polar Science and Global Climate, published in 2010. We call it the Polar Resource Book, and we are now in the process of publishing online an updated edition with funding from APEX, the Association of Polar Early Career Scientists, SCAR, the Scientific Committee on Antarctic Research, and IASC, the International Arctic Science Committee. We will continue to provide accessible tools to strengthen teaching and communication on important Arctic science for whom global climate change will impact the most. We hold international conferences every 2 years where educators from around the world come together for professional development and networking by educators for educators. After Coimbra, Hanover, Rovereto, and Cambridge, the next one will be in Iceland and will be called Stories in Ice. That will be next April. We have spent this year, because we couldn't have it in 2021 because of the pandemic, we spent this year providing a Hlaðborð, a loaded table in Icelandic, online events on science and indigenous knowledge, Arctic sci-art, snap talks, hands-on activities. And we are also going to start a global conversation based on the concept of a world cafe. All of these are available on our website. Part of the Hlaðborð was a 24-hour Sheraton that I was responsible for, which took place at the equinox in September and was also presented at the pre-COP in Milan at the end of September after being approved by the Italian Ministry of Ecological Transition. I'm actually from Milan, so that was kind of easy to be there. Here, we leave you with our contacts, and remember, anybody can become a polar educator. And now we are going to hear Suniva's story about polar education and her connection to the polar regions.
Thank you. What a pleasure for me to be here today with you, Maria Pia, in collaboration with Polar Educators International. Years ago, I was down in Antarctica driving a Zodiac into a place called Paradise Bay. I cut the engine, and there was a man there that looked up at me and said, "And what are we supposed to see here?" And I was a little dumbfounded and very curious about his comment, and I found him later on the back deck of the ship. And I asked him a little bit about himself, and I later came to understand that he was actually supposed to be there on that trip with his wife, who had passed from cancer. So this man could neither see nor feel Paradise Bay. And you might ask, well, what in the world does this have to do with me being here today or with this story? And for me, it elaborates something that's very real today. And that is the fact that there is darkness and suffering right now, quite a bit of it. So we see some of it, and some of it we cannot see. And I'm reminded of that great quote by Plato, "Be kind, for everyone is fighting a great battle." And right now, everyone is fighting a great battle. Climate change is real, and it's not a spectator sport. If we cannot agree on something as dramatic and as basic as a verified fact that the Arctic is warming 3 times faster than everywhere else in the world, then our hands are tied. And when it comes to the big stuff, and climate change globally is the big stuff, then we're in trouble. And it is now, and it's on our doorstep. Our collective purpose here in this world must be to preserve, protect, and save our ocean, the biodiversity of our species, our natural spaces, and each other, all of us. You know, if there's a question to ask, it's this: what role do I have in all of this? How can I be part of the solution? I asked that question years ago as I ached to find out how I could be relevant. And I found part of my answer in 2018 when I met Hilde. And I spent close to 25 years working in the polar regions, and I've been immersed in the impact of polar education and the power of polar education, the science, the stories, the history, the truths, and the local knowledge that exists and is dying to be told. You know, travel is a human business, and connecting cultures, blurring borders, sharing tradition, local knowledge, inspiring ideas for sustainability and exploitation, illuminating social injustices, and elevating the fact that we are all equal, yet equality does not exist. It would be no surprise to my family, friends, and colleagues that I would decide in 2018 to leave my job and my home in Canada to relocate to a tiny 20 square meter trapper's cabin way up in the Arctic, 78 degrees north, with no running water, no insulation, and no electricity. Does that not sound fun? Home would be called Bumsaboo, and this trapper's cabin was our base camp. We had solar panels, a windmill, and years of logistics and preparation with my co-founder Hilde Fallenström, and we use this as a platform for global dialogue, inspiration, storytelling, education, and social engagement around climate change in the polar regions. The Danish theologian Søren Kierkegaard said, "When you label me, you negate me." This being said, I am many things, but mostly I'm a reflection of all of us here today. I'm a symbol of the power of community and collaboration to inspire active engagement and education around something that could otherwise and is driving us into deep depression and paralysis. Climate despair is a real thing. And let's face it, nature is boss, and we humans are in big trouble. We can live, as we've proved, on a lot less than we think we can. We can be caretakers and not complete consumers. Our life at Bumsaboo forced us to acknowledge the very fact that we're not in charge of everything. Everything we did was simple yet purposeful, and we lived close to nature and weather 24/7, and it was both difficult and beautiful in the same breath. We lived days in complete perfect stillness, a true luxury for unfettered original thought. So what does real exploration look like today? Well, it looks like Knut Rasmussen, son of a Danish missionary and mother of Inuit blood, who was an explorer and accomplished writer, who was actually the first European to cross the Northwest Passage via dog sled. Rasmussen shared his story of a people who found a way to survive in such a land. His ambitions were not an object or place, but rather a state of mind at a depth of understanding that would allow him to reveal the wonders of the Inuit life. It is this sort of wonder and curiosity that all of us should seek to possess and live with. Just imagine that. It was this wonder and curiosity that Hilde and I lived with alone in the Arctic for 19 months, from September 2019 to May 2021. We were and are citizen scientists serving as a bridge between the science and the people to understand how to interpret the science. It's so complicated. Our education outreach was astounding, with experts like Kim Holman, Wade Davis, David Suzuki, and Dr. Jane Goodall. We used a satellite phone from our little rustic hut up in the Arctic with a video platform from Canada called Exploring by the Seat, with experts sharing their passionate love and expertise, and we connected with over 100 youth from around the world. Our citizen science was varied with phytoplankton, ice core samples, drone imagery for BCIT, cloud aurora, and a rocket launch observation for NASA, plastic and marine debris collection for Hütteruten, and wildlife observation, including polar bears, over 100 encounters, I might add, for the Norwegian Polar Institute. You know, changes in the last few years absolutely cannot be explained without taking into account human impact. We all know this. We need civic engagement to understand climate change, and citizen or community science is one way to accomplish that. It's a reality to say that the Indigenous people are the least responsible for the changes in our climate. Their work is often underestimated, and today, and it's always been this way, youth are our creative voice, and there are too few communication channels for youth to be decision makers that are used today. We need Indigenous knowledge to make sure science and local data feeds the research. We all need to be climate heroes. We all need to be CEOs, climate engagement officers. So what can people do? What can you do? One, look at what you value and stay grounded in those values. Protect what you love. Lead by example. Respect diversity and strive for better equity everywhere. What does it mean to be human today and to be alive today? There are 7,000 voices to answer that. And there are other people of the world with unique expressions of the human imagination and heart. Where there's love, there will always be hope. It was JFK who said, "Efforts and courage are not enough without purpose and direction." Let that quote be a call to action for the leadership here as we wind down a most pivotal COP26, and the clock is ticking. And for the record, shame on us if we do not get this right now for our children and our grandchildren. Do we need more proof? No, we need action. Our world absolutely depends on it. So with that, I share our contact details for Hearts in the Ice, and please stay in touch because Mother Nature needs her daughters. Thank you.
What can we say after this wonderful talk by Suniva? We now hear the voice from the Arctic, Shelly Elverum, who serves on the Council of Polar Educators International.
Hi, I'm Shelly Elverum, and I'm lucky enough to have lived for the past 20 years in the community of Pond Inlet on the north tip of Baffin Island in Canada's Arctic. I'm here today to invite you to think a little bit differently about what Arctic education can mean, and in a broader sense, what it means to listen and learn from the people who live in the Arctic. At the same time, I'd like to invite you to consider how we can look for new opportunities, not just to take lessons from Arctic peoples, but also to bring new information into the Arctic communities that are often burdened with poor internet and lack real opportunities to access the same information that people in the outside world are able to about climate change. It's actually a little bit crazy that people who live outside the Arctic often have a better ability and better bandwidth and technology to be able to access current scientific information about climate change than the people who actually live here. Before we begin, I'd really like to toss out that analogy about Arctic peoples being sort of the canaries in the coal mine of climate change. Because the canary dies, right? And the canary is just kind of sitting there passively while the world around it is changing. Instead, let's think about circumpolar Indigenous peoples as being both the ultimate actors in and educators in a changing Arctic environment. I'd like to introduce Ikarvik, the program that I work with. It was created to fill an incredibly huge gap, and it was created by Inuit youth here in Canada. In Inuktitut, the Inuit language, Ikarvik means a bridge, and it was created out of that need to be able to bridge Indigenous knowledge and Western science, and to be able to ensure that Indigenous peoples are not just the subjects of science, but active participants and real partners in understanding Arctic change. Why does this matter, and what are the implications for polar education? Well, beyond being a huge human rights issue, what you may not realize when you hear Arctic science is that you might only be getting part of the story. How do I know that? Well, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes for a minute and visualize Arctic scientists. What is it that you see in your mind? Let me guess. It's probably a bunch of white people in Gore-Tex hopping out of a helicopter with frosty beards, holding an ice auger or some other kind of technological equipment. But let's look a little bit deeper. The Indigenous people who are just past that group of scientists out on their own lands and waters are really, they're the scientists and researchers that we need to be hearing from. As I see it, research is an act of observing, hypothesizing, testing, interpreting, and communicating knowledge. And that's something that Indigenous people have always done, and is in fact the reason that people have been able to survive in the circumpolar world. I work with an amazing young Inuit man named Justin Milton, who at 16 was able to create this awareness that Inuit are the original Arctic scientists. So if you think about what Inuit have always done to survive, observing, hypothesizing, testing, and communicating, that's the science that's allowed circumpolar people to survive. So what does this mean to truly have Indigenous voices in research, and what are the advantages of this for polar education? Well, if we agree that circumpolar Indigenous peoples are the original Arctic scientists, then we need to agree that the best research and best knowledge about the North combines this almost like a zipper. This analogy was created by my friend and mentor, Ina, who, as a mother and as a seamstress and a researcher, was able to understand that Indigenous knowledge and science have often tried to be jammed together for understanding. But with her experience as a seamstress, she was able to say that Indigenous knowledge and science and technology can be used like a zipper to hold two different ways of knowing together and ultimately produce something that is stronger than two unequal parts. The end result is better information for decision making and the better ability for educators to connect the human story of climate change in the Arctic. As educators, you truly understand that the value of connecting science with our collective human experience is the way to make this stuff resonate with the general population. Only by understanding what a changing Arctic means to the people who live there can we understand what it means for all of us. Our goal with the Karvik is to really place youth in a critical role in the center of this type of conversation. We believe that youth have a remarkable ability by having a foot in two worlds, as they're often being told. They have the ability to understand Indigenous ways of life and social values and knowledge, along with the ability to understand and use science and technology. So being told you have a foot in two worlds is actually just an amazing advantage that Indigenous youth can use to be able to ensure that their communities and science are working together pretty much seamlessly. We do this by starting with a simple premise, which is that Indigenous knowledge and science are stronger together. We work with youth and we ask a very simple question, which is, if science was completely up to you, what would you and your communities want to be studying? The youth come up with priorities, which they run by elders and hunters and community leadership, and come up with ideas on what they would like to study in a way that combines Indigenous knowledge and science. They then work with scientists in a way that's truly collaborative and co-mentoring in such a way that makes sure that capacity is built both ways. Why is it important? Well, honestly, it creates better, more relevant knowledge for decision making. But please keep in mind that this is not about harvesting interesting stories from Indigenous people. It's about supporting a two-way foundation for sharing knowledge for better decision making. So now let's bring this back to polar education. Why does this matter? Well, polar educators are in an incredible position to be able to help Indigenous Arctic peoples to amplify their voices, share their knowledge, and their lived experiences around climate change. I'm going under the assumption that as polar educators, you want to tell the full story of a changing Arctic and that you want this to resonate with your audience. I can't think of a better way to do this than to tell the human story, and not one that we're used to seeing of Indigenous peoples as victims of climate change, but as uniquely placed specialists who can help all of us understand why a changing Arctic affects us all. And I'd just like to wrap up by saying that again, youth are in a remarkable position to be able to do a two-way transfer of knowledge and experiences that if we're really talking about polar education, we need to be really celebrating the role of Indigenous youth and being able to help all of us understand a changing Arctic. You can reach me at shellyelverum@gmail.com and feel free to check out eKarvik. It's a fantastic program for Indigenous youth, and it's spelled IKAARVIK. Look forward to hearing from you.
Great. So it looks like we have about 5 minutes. So I'm sure that there will be enormous number of questions because of this amazing experience that both Suniva and Hilda have lived. So would anybody from the floor like to ask a question? Yes, yes.
Both Suniva and Hilda, that if you're living together for 19 months in a remote spot, what is the best way of being able to manage human relationships in that time and be able to get along together successfully, because it's a model for how the human race needs to behave to get along together.
Do you want to take that, Hilde?
Yeah. Well, we first of all we had a few tools with us, but we had our arguments through our 19 months, obviously. But to answer your question, it was actually really just being grateful, because we needed each other every single day to survive up in the Arctic. We lived in an uninsulated trapper's cabin surrounded by polar bears in darkness for 3 months at a time. So we needed to help each other out with every single thing we did. And gratitude, saying thank you, looking at each other, it's unbelievably powerful, a lot more than we think of in the daily life. But that become our tool. And for me, when I get, I don't know, sad or cross or go inside myself, the fact that I needed to look at Suniva when she had maybe made the dinner or chopped some wood or picked up some snow and ice outside for water, look her in the eye and say thank you. And that became very natural to us. So we did that many times during the day, because we both made a contribution to our survival in the Arctic. So I think that's the answer. And I think we brought that back with us, and that's powerful.
I saw Ed wanted to ask a question.
Great, thank you. Ed Gemmell, Scientist Warning. Fantastic leadership you were showing out on the polar ice. We're in a desperate situation here at COP26, trying to see the survival of humanity and put us on the right track. What messages would you both have for the leaders here in showing leadership to the rest of us around the world?
Well, time is running out. We're not sitting in meetings anymore. We're taking action. And the message to the leadership is make this right, make this work. Give us hope, give us a vision for a better tomorrow. Because if decisions aren't being made at the leadership table, then those of us that are clanging our pots and pans and shouting from the rooftops, we can fall pretty dark in this situation right now. So, show us what leadership looks like today, with compassion, collaboration, and love for humanity and our planet. The time is now.
So, Cynthia?
Very inspiring. I think the ones who really need inspiration, in addition to the leaders, are the young people. What is your message for the young people?
Well, I think we have been talking to more than 100,000 kids throughout our 19 months at Bamsebu through a little dish powered by solar and wind. And they are so engaged. They have the best questions. And the experts really often have a hard time to answer them. Well, I think that we need to tell them that they have a lot more power than they think, because they go home to their parents, to their grandparents, and tell them how things are going to be. So just empower them, tell them that we need them, and they are tomorrow leaders, and we hear them.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the group of Facing Future, of course, Scientist Warning, have the incredible lesson of our beloved Stuart Scott, the one that actually discovered Greta Thunberg. So talking of engagement of young people, we couldn't go farther than that. And I've seen, even in Italy, the incredible message of Greta's. We were in Turin, and there were 50,000 students on her Fridays for Future. And it was such a shame that the pandemic stopped all that, because that was really going very strongly. And so let's hope that the message will become clearer and in the political world as well, because the children of today are the voters of tomorrow. And I can see that it's 3 seconds and we are over time, and we thank you all very much for being here, and we hope to have conveyed the passion that we share for the polar regions and the people who live there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, there you go. How cool was that? Hopefully you got some experience knowledge. This is what I was obviously talking about earlier, which I wonder if we can just swap that to that. No, we can't. I got it wrong. Sorry. There we go. That's even better, isn't it? There we go. Ah, and then they cut it. Technology. You gotta love it. So yeah, what did you think of that? Let me know in the comments, especially watching it on the replay. Yeah, what did I write down there? Suniva saying about arriving at paradise by the person who'd lost their other half, and what we're going to get here, and couldn't engage with it. But I'm sure that in time they did. Interesting one there. Nature is boss, and it is. We on this planet, we do our things, and then we think that we can control everything, which we can't. Actually, nature has a way of biting back, especially if we're being very naughty. So, even, with all our use of fossil fuels and stuff like that, Mother Nature has to deal with that. And it's interesting that, we have the ozone layer, we've got stuff like that, we've got the melting of the ice. So it's interesting, isn't it? How is that Mother Nature's way of actually dealing with what we're doing? But also it causes us problems. I mean, she doesn't have to look after us. I'm sure she does. Come on, she's bound to. But yeah, very interesting. Nature is boss. And they learned that out there after 18 months. And Shelly obviously going on about the indigenous people, how they're the original scientists out there as well, which, you've actually got to think these people have, built their community, that they've been there since day one, as they say, sort of thing. And they've learned, they've had to work with, like in our own, look at our own town. We, where we live, it keeps growing. Depending on what town that you live in. I know that some are shrinking, but I'm going to take the high street. There's an interesting one. The high street is no longer the high street, is it really? Because all the big stores and stuff are moving out and having their own areas outside, with the big parking lots and everything like that. So where you would normally go into the town to obviously shop and go to the high street and get what you wanted, you're now going to different places. You pull up, you park, you get what you want, and then you go away. And that's how we're adapting. That's how we're changing, with the commercial world, where it goes, well, actually we can build a bigger premises, cheaper rent, and, try and cater for everything that they need under that, whether it's, what sort of shopping, whether it's, stuff to up your house, or from food shopping. They're taking on more, and they want you to do that one shop. But if they're in the town centre, they wouldn't necessarily get that. And there's also the bit that you got your trolleys, haven't you? So it's more convenient. So like they are in the Arctic, theirs is different. Their world is changing, not through what they do, but from what everybody else does. And that's what I think was trying to be portrayed there. Is it's an interesting one. They're adapting, or they have to adapt, and they're trying to educate us into, well, hang on a sec, there's this, and this, and we used to do this. And I mean, it'd be great to get Shelly there for an interview and find out more. But if you're female and you're young, especially, and you're thinking of the sciences, has this influenced you in any way? I'd like to know. Put it in the comments, please, or reach out and directly, and let me know, because Pia and all the other people she was telling me about, till 1 o'clock in the morning. I can't stress that enough. We were just chatting away. Well, let's just say she was educating me quite a lot of interest. It was totally interesting. I mean, even I had to say, like, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. You got stuff to do tomorrow. I mean, I survived like 3 hours kip, but I was worried that she had other press conferences to do as well. But we continued that chat the next day and the day after that, and a mind of information. So an interesting one. Let us know. Go back through the other press conferences that we've live streamed. There is press conference 3. Still got to dig that out, and hopefully Will from the Scientist Warning Europe will be able to get me a copy of that. But it's all very interesting. If you look at all these scientists and all these people who've gone to the North Pole, South Pole, and all around, how they've educated, how they've learned, and try to let people understand what is actually going on. Like one of the biggest things, not one of the biggest things, but one thing, for instance, I learned, again, I said earlier, which was the weight of CO2 is 6 times less than methane. I'm like, okay, all right, I'll take your word for that. But that's what I'm saying. Necessarily, getting rid of the methane and creating CO2. Yes, it's not better for the environment. It's better for the environment, but it's still not good for the environment. But it's better than the methane. So interesting as well was the pipes as well in the Arctic and stuff, about them leaking methane and stuff, and how that's they're getting old. It's a bit like our water, like Thames Water. They've got a lot of water leakage due to old pipes, and they're going through and they're correcting that. It's costing them. They have to go back through, fix these old pipes, put in new construction, new products that last longer and are better, and everything, not made of iron, and blah 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 blah. And that's what we're trying to do with nature in a way. But anyway, let me know what you think. Let me I just check, see, and I haven't got a communication back, so I don't think we're going to actually have a chat. I mean, we saw Ed there. He was actually in the audience, and Pete was the first question, which he did ask, by the way, which was, how do you get on when it's just the two of you? Maybe humanity can learn from that. And it's true. My dad always taught me, and my mum always taught me, a please and a thank you goes a long way. Look people in the eye, please, thank you, good handshake, and it does well. And you can tell a lot from somebody if they don't say please and thank you, and if they just expect you to do something for them. And even when you do it, they still don't say thank you. It like holding a door open. Somebody holds a door open. I've held a door open now. 30 people walk through because it's busy, whatever, and only 1 or 2 have said thank you. Very extraordinary. It's like it's not that I kind of want them to say thank you. Well, I do, but it's just it doesn't cost you anything. Think of the people that you're with, and how people you interact. Like a sneeze, a bless you. I don't, usually I say to who they are, bless you. Sometimes I say thank you. Most of the time I say thank you, actually. Just interesting, little things. And I think in humanity, especially with this COVID crisis scenario, the community has come together in one respect, but also separated, and fear is taken over. And it's interesting to see the lengths, what people are going to, and out on the road. And during the petrol crisis, I will call it a petrol crisis, man-made by the government and the media to make people go out there and buy more petrol. There was not a crisis. It was just that demand was super inflated, and then boom, there we go. We've got a shortage of petrol. Well, we haven't. They're still producing the same amount, and they're still delivering the same amount. But they're going to have to do extra now because people are filling up the cars worried that they can't get to do what they need to do. Very interesting. Or maybe it was just to get rid of the E5 so that they didn't, so they could push out this E10, which is more expensive fuel for us older vehicle drivers. But there we go. More reason for me to get Frankie battery powered. So tomorrow's the last day. I believe it's a film or something that they're going to be doing. And what I hope to do, we'll live stream that. But again, I'll find out more. But hopefully see you tomorrow. It's the last day, so it'll be interesting to see how they've all got on. And then later on next week, or maybe the week after, I'll try and get Ed and a few of the other scientists on and interview them. Maybe one at a time, or maybe in a group. I don't know. My mind is buzzing with all the chats that I had, and the people that I've met while I was there as well. It's extraordinary. So thanks for watching. please go back and look at the other COP26. I'm going to put in the chat a little link. I mean, again, I don't know if this is actually going to be up for much longer or it'll be there for tomorrow. Here's the link that I'm using to get. Actually, that's probably not even the right one. Oh, no, it is the right one. There's a link there that allows you to look at other stuff. I mean, they've got fossil fuel treaty initiative on this. Excuse me. Bolivia hosting Young Go Latin America, whatever. Loads of conferences, loads of stuff going on at COP26. So maybe if this is of interest of you, obviously, because you're watching this, obviously it is, go and have a look at that. Have a look around. If there's other stuff you need to know, or just put down in the comments and I'll reply back, because I've got access behind the scenes, and also I try to find stuff so that you can easily get to it too. As always, here at FBL Broadcasting, part of Community Corporation Limited, how we like to bring things forward to you so that it makes it easier, so that you don't have to hunt around and try and find things. And we hope, for instance, COP26 is interesting to you and that you find it very informative. And if there's anything we can do, I mean, reach out to Scientists Warn in Europe, and reach out to, obviously in this last press conference, they gave you their email addresses, and reach out and contact them. Polar explorers and educators, and if it's something of interest, do reach out. Do think different. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget, give us a like, give us a subscribe, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course YouTube. And don't forget, also we have FBLStreamsLive.com, our new platform for live streaming certain private events and stuff. But if you have an event that you want live streamed, and like a sporting one especially or whatever, let us know, and we can come there and sort something out, and hopefully you can get money out of it as well. Right, thanks for watching. As always, back tomorrow. Have a good day.